District Director, and Stephen Greer is joining me this morning. He's here with me, and he's actually shadowing this year as he takes on title promotion process for next year. So welcome. We're glad all of you could participate. How many do we have signed on now, Jenny?
Oh, we have 23 people signed on.
Okay. So we were expecting 32, so some folks might join us as we go along. We're going to actually record this training.
Yes, I just started the recording. We introduced yourself.
Great. So those that were not able to participate will be able to view the recording at a later date. So we're going to transition here, and I'm going to attempt to share a screen. Let's see. When I had to close out and restart, my PowerPoint had to come up. So
yeah, of course.
Okay, so now we will.
When I started this morning, it wanted to update, so I feel your pain.
Okay, so I'll put my presentation. Okay. So can you all see the PowerPoint now?
Yes, we can see the PowerPoint, and yeah, saying you've got it in full screen. Great.
Very well. So again, thank you for being patient with me as we get started. And as you've already heard from Janine Kaiser with Extension Technology, she's joining us today, should we have any additional technical issues. So what are we going to do today? Well, first I'm going to provide an overview of the policy and process for title promotion. And that'll take probably 14 slides or so, and then we're going to transition to Charlotte Glenn, this extension agent over in Chatham County, and she's going to actually share with you the application components for the title promotion process, and that's 27 or so slides. And then we're going to come back to me with important dates and tips so we can help you be successful. And then we're going to ask that you save your questions, because as we go through these slides, and death by PowerPoint, I'm afraid, you'll probably get most of your questions answered. So let's just jump right in there with this process. So what does a title promotion entail? Well, certainly today we're going to talk about for agents, program assistants, and technicians, but this first slide, we look at our current career ladder that allows you to either start with extension as an assistant agent or associate agent. So with those, you can progress from assistant to associate and associate to full agent, we often call the agent position. And we'll get into eligibility for these promotions in another slide. And then for program assistants, they can become program associates, and technician ones can become technician 2. So for agents to move from assistant agent to associate agent, they must first complete a master's degree, and that needs to be done before March 1st of the year that you're applying. And you also must have a minimum of 3 years of service with extension as of July 1. So if you're applying in 2017, it would be March 1st of 2017. You need to have your master's in July 1st, 3 years experience. If you have a doctorate degree, you can substitute that for 1 year of experience. To move from associate to full agent, you need to have the master's degree and 3 years as an associate agent. So again, the date for years of service is of July 1st of the promotion year. With program assistants and technicians, to move to program associate or technician 2, we require that they have 5 years of service as of July 1st and responsibility for really a program, whether it's in 4-H, FCS, or Ag. Now, if they have a 4-year degree, the 5 years of service isn't required. So the 4-year degree and then responsibility for a program, of course, that's with minimal supervision that they would be in charge of. So why do all of this? Well, certainly there's salary considerations. And with those, last year we changed from 5% and 7% to 6% and 8%. This follows along with the university, much like moving from assistant professor to associate, and then from associate professor to full professor. So that's where the 6% and 8% comes from. And again, it says it's eligible. So, and you see the word may receive, salary increases may receive. So why is that? Well, certainly with our funding partners, the availability of funds has to be taken into consideration. Generally here on campus, these are the first considerations made in the new budget year. But when we have grant funded either program assistants or county partners, we have to take that into consideration that the full 6 or 8% might not be given in the year that they receive if the budget doesn't allow it. So as we move into other benefits, certainly if you're interested in becoming a county extension director, we require that you either have become an associate agent or a full agent. And then to receive field faculty status, we require at least the associate level. And also, as we have more and more area specialized agents, those positions that require a master's degree, you also need to have gone through the title promotion process. So once you have hit the submit button, what happens? So there is actually a title promotion review committee that goes through all of the packages submitted, and then we make recommendations to both NC State and A&T administration. The committee includes 6 agents, 2 from 4-H, 2 from FCS, and 2 Ag agents, as well as 2 program leaders, 1 from NC State and 1 from A&T. 1 district director, which I alluded to earlier, I'll serve this year. Eric served last year, Stephen will serve next year. 1 regional program coordinator also serves from A&T, and this year will be Lynette Marsh. So in addition to that committee, we ask that if the position is funded through A&T, the regional program coordinator, and if it's a shared position, both the DED and the regional program coordinator would review it, as well as our director of county operations or the associate administrator at A&T, and then the state director or administrator at A&T Extension. So in this process, where do you find title promotion information? Well, certainly on One Stop Shop, we have space for you to upload your title promotion packages, fill in details. There's a drop-down menu, and Charlotte actually is going to navigate through this a little later on. So you'll be able to see, if you haven't already been to the One Stop Shop site, where that is and where to find these tabs that we'll talk about as we go through this presentation. But a lot of the information you've already entered over the years through ERS, and there's different reports that you can generate to help gather that information for your title promotion. But once it's submitted to by the district director to administration, then the title promotion goes through the internal process and will ultimately be approved or rejected, and that will show up on the one-stop shop as well. So this is just the website, if you're not familiar, where to find it, because I know folks that are joining us are at various places in their career. You might be thinking about, what I need to be preparing or keeping or putting together as I go through the next several years, thinking about title promotion. Some of you I know are already working on your package, so you're well familiar with this. But at this time, we're going to transition over to Charlotte Glenn, and she's going to show you the one-stop shop.
All right, thank you, Keith. I, of course, have a cold, you probably can tell, so you'll have to bear with my gravelly voice. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start with looking at one-stop shop, and then move on to the slides where we talk about the title promotion components. And Keith, feel free to jump in with any comments at any point. Okay, my screen just went black. There it goes. Okay, can everybody see the screen and hear me?
Yes, I can see the screen and you sound fine.
Okay, wonderful. So this is One Stop Shop, everybody's favorite place to shop, all right? It's one stop because you never escape. That's and there's all kinds of things in here, including title promotion. So when you get ready to start working on your title promotion packet, this is the place to come. Click on the title promotion link. And you will be creating a new title promotion. So that's the third link down. And you'll say you want to create. Yeah, I definitely want to do this. It doesn't believe me. So a new one's popped up here. So on mine, you can see I've already got these other where I've gone through title promotion before. You see, once I was in Pender, then I was in Chatham. But so when you do this for the first time, you probably will just get that first link, and you'll have these icons beside it. So really similar to reporting in ERS. And the really important one, the very, very critical one to start off with is the details. And details is where you'll go in and indicate what position you're currently in. And then you'll indicate what title you want to go to. So if you are an assistant agent and you are going to associate agent, that's the first level, you put in the date you started working with extension, your program area, your years of experience. You go ahead and put that in, and that will be as of July 1st. If you're submitting this in February or March, you're thinking of July 1st of that current year. And then your EPAT scores automatically show up. So you don't have to go get those. You don't have to enter those. They are automatically in there. And if for any reason you needed to add some comments or explain anything, this would be the box to do that. So this is the critical thing to go ahead and do first. If you don't do this page, even though it's very little effort, but if this page isn't completed, then your packet won't be accepted. The place where you are going to put all the information is under the Files page. And when you write your narrative, we'll talk about all that. It should be included in that in just a minute. This is where it will be uploaded. And you'll just choose the file and upload it here. You also have the option to put some supplemental documents. We'll talk about exactly what they are, and that's where they go. So all of that's on the File page. The Comments page is where your CED and DED will add comments, and there will also be a letter from your county manager or their designee that will go here. But you will need to get that letter and have it sent to your CED, and they'll upload it. And then the summary is where you can go and check the status. So, right now it's telling me it's not complete. And once it's successful, it'll say, it was successful once it's been approved. So that's what is involved with One Stop Shop. Those are the places you need to know about. So that's pretty simple and very similar to how we do stuff for our ERS reporting. So now I'm going to switch. I'm just going to switch to my PowerPoint slides. I'm going to stop sharing this.
And this might be a good time if anyone has any questions, they can go ahead and put that in the Q&A. That's Q&A button should be on the bottom of their screen. They might need to mouse over.
Okay. We want to check for any questions.
We have a very quiet group. You
Okay.
must be very thorough.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the title promotion component. So you should be seeing those slides now. Do you see that, Janine? Is it in full screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And Susan just asked July of 2017.
Or
We're getting
yeah,
a couple of questions, but we've lost Keith again, so
okay.
so we may need to come back to that. So go ahead and that might be him on the phone.
Okay. My understanding is yes, it is July 2017. So you're putting your packet in March of 2017, but you're calculating those years of experience to July 2017. But we'll definitely get Keith to confirm that. So the title promotion application or title promotion packet has four main parts. There's the title page, which is actually just that details tab we just looked at. So it's, nothing big and fancy you have to do anything special for. The narrative is the heart and the guts and the body and the brain. It's really most of what your title promotion packet is. And then you have those recommendation letters and supporting documentation. And all of this is put into one-stop shop in the tabs we were just looking at. So the title page, is throws you off a little bit that it's called a title page because it makes you think, oh, I have to create a title page, but you don't. The title page just is the details tab in one-stop shop. And just remember that that's always a good first thing to do because it is mandatory. And if you don't have it, even if you put everything else in there, your packet will not be considered, which would be tragic. So this is just showing again where you would go in and put that under that details tab. So next is the narrative, and of course this is the very big part. It has three sections: cooperative extension programs, marketing of extension, and your leadership, career, and professional development. And the really important thing about the narrative is you will compose this in Word. You're going to put this together. You're starting with a blank piece of paper and you're writing this. So there's not little boxes to fill in. You're creating it. So you compose it in Word. You submit it online under the Files tab, and it can be submitted as a Word file or a PDF file. So last year they came through both ways and both work. I guess the only good thing about a PDF is it does lock everything in place, where sometimes with a Word file, you might submit it one way, but for some reason stuff moves a little bit when the reviewer opens it. So again, that's just the title promotion page where you see that file tab. It's where you submit it. And once it's submitted, this is what it looks like. So it clearly tells you that packet's in there. If you're a little obsessive compulsive like I am, you want that very clear confirmation that it's there. And you can even click on it and look at it and make sure it looks correct once it's loaded. All right, so the narrative is really you telling us what you've done. It's your story and your words. There's a lot of flexibility there in how you tell us what you've done, but there is a 35-page maximum. So that sounds like a bunch, but especially if you've been in extension for very long, you can easily, quickly fill up 35 pages. But it is okay to have less. You do not have to use 35 pages. In fact, as a reviewer, I'd encourage you to try to keep it as cogent as possible. So don't feel like you have to fill up all that space. And you can be creative. We want to, it's great, it's fine to let some of your personality come through, but just make sure you're using the template that is available on the intranet under the county operations forms. Make sure you're following that template when you're putting your narrative together, and you are using the headings that are in the template, and you're including all those parts. So the template, when you download it, is actually just a 3-page description. That tells you everything that's supposed to be in there. And the template's really great to look at for keywords, for very important things you need to include, and for maybe some things you might want to bold when you put it in your packet. Like under the planning, it's going to ask you how to use your advisory leadership. So advisory leadership is a good word to bold. Any of those key terms like that. So it helps us pick them out when we're reviewing to say, oh, they've done that. Look, it looks really good. So just make sure there are some older versions of this template. And just make sure you've got the version that's dated 2016, and that's the one that is on the intranet. And it's titled, when you download it, it says template. When you open it up, it says promotion package components and expectations. So there's a version for agents, and there's a version for technicians and program assistants. So with your narrative, strongly encourage you to make it reviewer friendly. So for those agents and those other folks on the panel that are going to be reviewing, we're going to be reading 15, 20, maybe 30 packets. So anything you can do to help clearly communicate and make it easy for us to understand your story is going to certainly help us give you all that you deserve. So some tips would be definitely use headings and subheadings and have those aligned with what's on the template. Use bullets. Bullets are wonderful for really calling attention to key things. Bold those keywords that are in that template, because that'll help us key into those important things that you've done. You can add images. Of course, they take up some room, but if you have some great images that really help illustrate your programming, that's a wonderful thing to add. And I should really encourage you to use graphs and tables and charts to display your data, especially when you get to talking about your evaluation, outcomes, and impacts. So just a couple of examples. This is a chart, a nice chart that shows outcomes and impacts. And it's always great to see things lined up like this over time. And you can see there's growth. The number of participants is increasing, so it shows your program's growing. The number of your economic benefits are increasing. So that's a great way to show this type of information, whereas if you were trying to write this in a paragraph, it would be really not fun to read. You can show things in graphs, all kinds of different types of graphs. So this is showing participation in 4-H programming. So we're seeing growth, some growth. This one's a nice chart because it shows all the different types of areas where youth are being reached, and we can see that there's growth in some areas, and of course, some areas grow, some are decreasing, but it's a really good display of that, and then you can talk about those numbers. You don't have to repeat all these numbers in your narrative. You can talk about them and refer us to that graph. Pie charts, of course. This one's showing ethnicity or race. And then here's another type of chart that's showing evaluation results. So this one is actually showing behavior change. So this is a really important one. This is the type of thing you really want to be able to show in your packet is people changing their behavior, adopting new practices. That's the true outcomes and the impacts of your programming. Not just the numbers of people, but the numbers of people who made a change.
Charlotte, there was a question about sharing your charts with the participants here.
My personal charts or these that are on the PowerPoint?
On the PowerPoint.
Okay.
I
pulled them out of some of last year's time promotion packets, so I can't share those whole packets unless I got permission from the people. But I could certainly post those charts somewhere that people could look at them. Those are just some examples. I don't want, with examples, they're wonderful to get you started and get you thinking, but don't let it limit you. You can make a lot of different types of charts. Don't think those are just the only type that'll work. Right. But we'll figure out a way to share them, to show people. To give them
fantastic
examples. Really, one important thing though to think about, don't just throw a chart in there or a graph just for the heck of it. They take up a lot of room for one thing. And if they're not really showing you a lot, you know, you kind of, as a reviewer, look at it and say, wow, you know, what was the point here? So this was a great example of county population from 1970 to 2010. And this chart took up like at least a third of a page. And but really, one sentence could have done it and said that population hasn't changed much in the last 40 years. So make sure your chart is showing us something that is best displayed in that format, you know, that you couldn't just easily say it in a sentence or something like that. The one thing that was great about this chart, though, is that they did include the source. So that's really important. If it's not your personal data you're showing, please, show us a source where you're getting the information, such as population. You know, if you live in a county that's had huge population growth and you have room for that chart, that can be a good visual to show how your programs had to change because population maybe is increasing so much or so rapidly. All right, so just a little more general about the narrative. Really, the purpose is for you to help us to understand how you decided what to do, what you actually did, who was involved, including, you know, what resources you had to develop. And most importantly, what were the results? You know, who participated in these programs, and the real key is what changed for these participants. You know, what improved, what behaviors did they change, what knowledge did they gain. And you also want to make sure that this supports and aligns Extension's missions and goals and objectives, and show that, and show how it meets your county's plan of work and the needs of your county. So we're going to start off with the first part of the narrative. It does have 3 parts. So cooperative extension programs, that should be an S on program, because you're likely going to be talking about more than one. But cooperative extension programs, this is going to be the main part of your title promotion. Even though, you know, we talked about the 4 parts of the whole packet, the narrative itself has 3 parts. The cooperative extension programs is going to be the majority of it. And you can include, in fact, I'd encourage you to include or open with a brief introduction, kind of a background of you and your position and your county, but really brief. You know, this would be less than a page. Especially, this can be really helpful if you've got a packet where you've moved from one county to another, just kind of key us into what's, you know, why it's switching between counties. And also, it's really helpful to understand the position you were coming into. So was it vacant for a long time before you, and so you were starting from scratch, or you were building things over? Did you take over a really thriving program, and this is how you added to it? So give us that context, you know, of what the program was when you started, and then your packet shows us where you've taken it. So cooperative extension programs, this is all about why, how, what, and so what. You'll hear those terms several times in this presentation today. You're putting that in a clear and concise story. And what we want to be able to see is that you understand and you're proficient in programming. So in all stages of programming, planning, design, implementation, and evaluation. And again, most importantly, that you can successfully achieve outcomes and impacts, valued outcomes and impacts. That are part of Extension's mission. And the title promotion process is often described as us talking about our work in the scholarly terms. So it's supposed to be comparative to the campus professors, their title promotion process, which they must show scholarly work. So that's kind of the basis of how this title promotion process was developed, is looking what's done on campus for professors and coming up with an equivalent for agents. So for each major program that you are conducting, you need to provide an independent, concise, and well-written, comprehensive narrative that describes all of these for each program area, so for each program. So you're going to go through planning, design, outputs and activities, outcomes and impacts, potential societal benefits, and then you're going to include some of your success stories from ERS. So those are all outlined in detail in the template. So that gives you all the information you need to put in there. A major program is basically a state objective you report under. So you wouldn't maybe necessarily talk about individual activities, like say maybe you're a livestock agent and you have a youth livestock show, and you also have a program for adults. Of course, your adult component of your livestock programming. You wouldn't necessarily have to go through all of these individually for both of those if they're all part of the same objective you report under. So you could put them together as part of that objective. But then if so, that would be maybe your sustainable and profitable farms and agriculture. Then maybe you might have some other things you do under local foods. So that could be a different step you describe. So when deciding, how many things you need to go through for the major programs, think about the state objectives you report under. And start with your best one first. So if you're reporting under more than one, which has the most impact? So put the most impressive one first. And realistically, you're only going to do 2 or 3 because you just, time-wise, you can't really have full programs for more than 2 or 3 major objectives. So we're not looking for you to go through all these steps with every single thing you do, but it's with everything you do towards an objective. So again, just kind of some little bit different words to look at, or different to think about, is the difference between a program and an activity. The program is everything you're doing to bring about change in client behavior towards or around a specific issue and objective. So those align with those major state objectives, the profitable sustainable agriculture, things like healthy eating, physical activity, chronic disease. So you can review all of those in one-stop shop. Whereas activity are the individual parts. So the individual things you're doing to work towards making a change in that larger objective or issue. So a newsletter is an activity, workshop, camp, field day. Those are all things you'll talk about as part of your program, but they themselves aren't the program alone. So you can think about activities as the pieces of the puzzle that make up our program. So when we put all those puzzle pieces together, we have this beautiful, impressive picture of what we're doing in our county, or if you're a regional agent in the region you work. So it's really important to show all the pieces for each of your major program areas. So that starting off with planning, which is why, what is the issue, why is it critical to extension, and how that led to design, or how you decided you would address the issue, who was the target audience, what you actually did, the outputs and activities of what you actually did. Those are the activities. Who attended. This is sometimes called the implementation stage. And then, of course, the really key one is the outcomes and impacts. But, of course, you have to build up to outcomes and impacts, and we need all this stuff beforehand. So what's changed as a result of what you did? How'd you measure it? How'd you evaluate the program? And then taking it just that little step further to talk about potential societal benefits, as well as the outcomes and impacts for your program participants. Was somebody going to add? Was somebody going to say something?
Charlotte, looks like we have a few questions.
Okay.
In the Q&A.
Do we want to address, are that the things we need to address now, or as Keith suggested, should we hold them till the end and see if some of them get answered as we go along?
It's up to you.
Let's see. I can't see the Q&A. I've got something.
Oh, are you full?
Read a couple of them to me, and we'll do a couple right now and then move on.
Okay. Well, you're going for a full agent. Is there anything in One Stop Shop already? Well, so if you go to a full agent, your first title promotion packet is already going to be there. But when the title promotion packet for both stages, whether you're going from an assistant to associate or associate to full, it is the exact same process. You should be able to show in going from an associate to full how you built on what you had done before, and even greater impacts. But it's the exact same template and format. Is there another? Keith is answering them by text. So
okay,
Great.
So
Okay.
I think we're good.
All right.
Thanks so much.
We'll keep moving. So the one thing about this lovely little diagram here with this nice, neat little boxes is it ignores a really major challenge of programming and of especially trying to put your programming in a title promotion packet, is that it shows it as this very discrete linear process. It's like, oh, you were hired as an agent and your first year, all you did was plan. All you did was go out and talk to people and put your advisory committee together and figure out what needed to be done. Then the next 6 months you moved into design and you designed this completely detailed program with all its parts. Then you spent the next year or so actually delivering it, and then you finished up with 6 months of doing nothing but evaluation. And of course, nothing in extension works that way. We're doing all of this all of the time. And so when you're working on your title promotion packet, you have to kind of sit down and untangle all those things because they are ongoing, overlapping, and they're synergistic. They're feeding into each other. So you have an activity, you evaluate it, some of the feedback gives you ideas, so that's planning again. And so this is something that's always going around. I like to think of it like a spiral. And the good thing about a spiral is you're moving up and your circles are getting bigger as you move up. You're having more impact. But all this stuff is being thrown in all the time. All this stuff is coming out of it all the time. And so it makes it a little bit challenging to try to talk about it in a linear model, which is what's being asked with the title promotion packet. Because this is what it feels like, when you sit down and try to think about all this stuff. It's just like a tornado, and you're just left feeling kind of dizzy. But we're going to tell you how to tame the tornado, because what you really need to do, and what I did with both my title promotion packets, is sat down with a bunch of sticky notes, a bunch of different color sticky notes, and just wrote things on it that I had done. So, I have an advisory committee for this. We met. I had a program, I had activity, and this was it. I did it about. So I just started with writing down all these things, and then started sorting them into those different phases: the planning, design, outputs, activities, and outcomes, impacts. That system worked for me. I know everybody has their own system, their own way of working, but that's one way to just maybe sit down and start thinking about all these things and putting them in that more linear order, even though they didn't always happen A to B to C to D. So what we want you to start thinking about, instead of just that whirling tornado with everything mixed up in there together, think about it maybe as steps, steps that are working upwards towards an ultimate goal. And how did you move your clients towards that goal? So it's very important to tell the whole story. And a lot of times it might be easy or the easy way to start, because our activities are what we are dealing with most of the time and things we really enjoy. So that could be a good starting point. Think about all the activities you've had over the last few years, and then work backwards from that. That's what worked personally for me, kind of starting with the activities, working backwards, and why did we do that? How did we come to that point? And then, really critical is what happened. So once you work backwards, then it's very important to work forwards. Other people I've talked to started with that. They started with the outcomes and impacts. Like, that's the most important thing. That's what I'm going to start with when I'm planning, when I'm kind of doing this pre-process to get my title promotion together. So figure out what works for you. If you need to start at the very beginning, work to the end, or if you want to start with the end or somewhere in the middle, just making sure you get all those parts in there. So we'll look at each one of them just a little bit more detail, including some of the really key words. This is all pulled directly from the template. So that's all available to you in the template that's on the intranet. So planning is really why you did what you did. So there needs to be a compelling need for this program. And really that should connect with the outcome and impact objectives in our ERS system. So you're not inventing a need. You don't even really usually have to come up with new words for it, because it's there. Using our outcome and impact objectives to frame everything you've done. Very important to show how the advisory system was involved, if there was needs assessment, if it fits with your county's strategic plan, how you prioritized. You know, that's one thing in extension. There's never a shortage of things we could do, but how did you prioritize which one you did do? Then for design, design is how you went about making this program. And this should outline the program you developed, the goals and objectives that you had, the outputs and activities that you designed to deliver. So you're still talking about it from a design standpoint, you know, decided to do this and this, and what outcomes and impacts you were targeting. So that shows real intention. You know, you didn't just sit there and wait for something to pop up and, you know, follow this and follow that. You had an intention and a plan, and you went forward and made a difference with intention. That you had an evaluation strategy when you were thinking about all this, even though it is an evolving process. And if it was an integrated program, so that's, you know, asked a couple of different ways in the packet, but so if you have worked with other program areas in your county or cross county lines, it's a very important thing to tell us about. Then the outputs and activities are really what you did, and they describe the comprehensive program you implemented to impact those needs. So these are the strategies and teaching methods. So those are really the activities right there. We talk about strategies and teaching methods. You know, if I put together a newsletter that went to all the producers, we held meetings, we had field days, you know, all of those things are your teaching methods. Who was participating, and who was the target audience, and then who participated. If you had any efforts to expand to reach new audiences, and what you did for that. Having evidence of diversity is included in the description that's in the template. And, you know, you can talk about diversity in many different, you know, diversity of people with less experience, more experience, diversity in ethnicity, diversity in ages, diversity in rural versus urban. And that really fits in with how you reached out to new audiences. If you had collaborations or partnerships in the community with other organizations, with other agents in your office or across county lines, those are really important things to tell us about. And any funding or resources you were able to generate, either on your own or through your partnerships and collaborations to all support your programming. And then the really big part, the gold star, the outcomes and impacts, and that's all that so what? You know, you did all this, so what? What was the result? And we want to look at both outcomes, which are changes, those CASA changes, you hear the term lots, so knowledge, aspiration, skills, and attitudes. Sometimes the word intentions is used in there. So what did people learn? How did this affect what they intended to do, what they aspired to do? What skills did they gain? Did they change in attitude? Because that can certainly be a big part of changing a behavior. Then the impacts. So we've got outcomes, and then we have the impacts, is the changes they actually made. So impacts, you're really having to go back and do some follow-up evaluation to get that type of information. With outcomes, you can evaluate folks at the end of an activity, end of a class or a workshop, and learn things about their knowledge gain and aspirations. But you really need to go back to them several months later to ask them, did you actually change your behavior? And then, you know, any social, economic, or environmental conditions that changed because of those behavior changes. It's very important to include your evaluation data and really helpful to illustrate them instead of, you know, talking about, writing paragraphs about evaluation data can be a little bit dry. So illustrating that, taking that data and put it into tables and charts and graphs. You can put in some key client testimonials. So, you know, this can be really simple things, like if you had an evaluation, some quotes, like if people took the time to actually write something on there about how something made a difference in their life. Those can be really rich and impactful things. You connect to those testimonials to include. You don't have to go out and petition people for testimonials, and you don't want to include just pages of testimonials, but just some really key things if you have them to help illustrate the numbers. And of course, this is the most critical part of your application. It carries the greatest weight. So every other part of your packet can be perfect, but if you're not showing those outcomes and impacts, you're not going to get title promotion this year. Of course, if that happens, you can always improve your packet and resubmit it next year. And then potential societal benefits is included, where you're supposed to be, this is not something that you've actually gone out and evaluated or collected data on. You may have some research findings that support the potential societal benefits. This is really looking at what's called public value. How did the program benefit those who did not participate? So your direct participants, of course, have benefits if they change their behaviors and they make more money, or they get healthier, or they can grow plants better, or they're more successful in school. But how does that benefit the people that didn't participate, so society at large? So the fact that kids are doing better at school and they're more likely to go to college, why is that a good thing for society? The fact that people are healthier, they've adopted behaviors that are going to reduce their risk of chronic disease. Why is that a good thing for society? The fact that people are farming or gardening using methods that are less likely to pollute water or to get nitrogen in your water sources. Why is that a good thing? So that's what the societal benefit is. This is not something you need to spend a whole lot of pages on, but just showing that you see that final big picture part of what you're doing, how it's making a difference for everybody, not just the direct participant. And then your success stories, those are going to be pulled from ERS, so you're not having to write new success stories. You should go into ERS, and you do not have to put every single success story you have in there. You pick the ones that are relevant to what you're telling us about, and that's really if over the last 5 years, or if you've only been with Extension 3 years, of course, then, or since your last title promotion, if you're going from the associate to full. You don't have to go back and repeat anything that was in your first packet. And then the fun part is you go through and you repeat that process for each of your major programs. And so you can see there's really you're only going to be looking at 2 or 3 major programs you're doing this for, because you just, with a 35-page limit, you couldn't put more. And then, as a human being with a finite amount of time, you couldn't do more than that. So make sure you do repeat it for each of those major programs. So that's the first part of the narrative, the cooperative extension programs. That is the 90% of the narrative. It's 90% of your title promotion packet. Are there any burning questions about that part before we talk about the marketing and the leadership? And Janine, you'll have to tell me if there's any burning questions, because I have done something to my view that I can't find the chat box.
Right now, we're good on questions. I believe you answered the one about July 2017 earlier, and that was the only one that was remaining.
Okay, and I'd still like Keith to confirm that one. So, did we get him back with us?
We did. And Suzanne actually asked the question about the timing. It was an early question about the timing of submitting. Is that correct?
Yeah, Keith is going to cover that. But it has to be submitted by March 1st, and ideally you would get it to your CED and DED by February 1st to give them time to review it and give you feedback. But he's going to go into that as we wrap it up.
Okay.
So we've gone through the cooperative extension programs. That is, like I said, the vast majority of the whole packet. Marketing of cooperative extension. Again, this is covered in the template. You want to be able to show how you've enhanced Extension's image. So how have you been a good agent? Being a good agent enhances Extension's image. You know, have you been part of an effort to put together a really good regional program or a regional newsletter, or even do you just have a really great newsletter yourself, or a blog, or are you on TV or radio? So things that you're doing that reflect well on Extension. So sometimes you're repeating a little bit of what you put in the cooperative extension programs, but you're emphasizing how the quality of what you've done is enhancing Extension's images. You get the opportunity here again to talk about integrated programming, you know, if you've been involved in cross-disciplinary efforts, and if you've been working with other agents to secure resources. And you get to provide evidence of this. This is what goes in those supporting documents that you can upload. So evidence of your marketing, so marketing maybe a copy of a newsletter or a copy of a flyer, or I know there's some folks now, everything's online, so I guess you could submit a screenshot, or you could submit, you know, a mock-up version of something that you do that's online. And then last of all is leadership, career, and professional development. And really for these last two parts, you're looking at a couple of pages each maximum. I mean, I'm just sharing that as a guideline. I'm not saying that's what it has to be, but you want the majority of your pages to be dedicated to your programming. So you look at, you know, just a couple of pages maybe of each of those, and some of them, you know, for some people, depending on how long you've been in Extension and what you've been focusing your time on, you might not have quite as much. So don't worry if every single thing that's listed in the template, if you don't have something to share about that, that's okay. Just add what you do have. So for your leadership, career, and professional development, your in-service training that you've completed, this is all in the LIM system, so you can go back and look up your record. You have a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe you just want to pull out some of the really critical stuff, especially anything that you've taken and can show how you've used it or applied it or shared that information. If you have been doing any formal coursework, say you've worked on a master's degree, or you're working toward a doctoral degree, or you know, just taking some classes, the 3 hours of credit you're doing for 5 years, tell us about the formal coursework you've taken, and any self-directed professional development. So you went to other conferences that worked in-service training, those type of things. That shows initiative that you were really actively seeking those opportunities. And evidence of teamwork and team efforts and how you value teamwork. This is a good place to reemphasize that. That's going to be, of course, covered in your programming, but just bring it out here again, just kind of tell us or key us in again, these team efforts you're involved in. You don't have to describe them in detail here because they were in your programming, but just reminding us of them. And if you're in any professional associations, if you've played, you know, been a leader in that organization, or a person on the board, or headed a committee, or things like that, committees and opportunities that you've been involved with in your county, in Extension, or you know, not necessarily in Extension. And then if you've received any honors, awards, or recognitions, add those in. So that completes the narrative. That's the whole narrative, those 3 parts. Of course, programming being the big one. Then you have your recommendation letters. And your recommendation letters, you just need to ask your county manager for their designee. And I know in some counties, agent doesn't go directly to a county manager, so it might be your CED that asks them. But there are very specific things they want to see in that letter, and they're listed on page 3 of the template. So if it's you that asks, or if it's your CED that asks, make sure you give them that information. This is why I need the letter, and this is what it should talk about. And it should talk about things like your program responsibilities and the significance you're making to the county, and how you're contributing to the whole program and the success of the program in that county. So this is a letter that's going to be, they're not going to send it to you, they're going to send it to your CED, usually, possibly your DED, and that person will upload it into the comments tab in One Stop Shop. And then your CED and DED will both review your application, and they'll add comments there as well. And you'll be able to see that when you go into that comments tab and see that if it's been done yet or not. Then the very last thing is the supporting documentation. And it says it's optional, but I would encourage you to try to include at least a few things that really illustrate, because then this is your evidence of marketing. This is really to show some of the quality work you're doing. And those are uploaded under the Files tab, the same place your narrative is uploaded, but it is separate from the narrative. So you don't add these pages onto the end of your narrative. And you can only do 10 single-sided pages. So you are very limited, or somewhat limited in the amount of stuff you can put up there. And that can mean that's a total of 10 pages. So you can do 10 files that are each 1 page. You can do 2 files that are each 5 pages. You know, a file is 2 pages, a file is 8 pages. So, but there can only be 10 total, no matter how many files there are. And each file can only be 500 megabytes. They just, it won't accept it if it's over that. So pay attention to that. So there's the files again. And again, you can see them once they're uploaded, and you can go in there and open them and make sure they look like you wanted or thought they would look. So you can get that confirmation that they're there and that they're correct. And then the last thing I wanted to share was just some resources to get you started, because getting started on a title promotion packet is the toughest part. Because again, you look at the first time you read through the template and then you think about what you're doing, you're like, oh my God, it's impossible. I can never do it. But you can. It just takes a little bit of untangling all the things you're doing, because as I've said before, they are all interconnected, and you know, they're not necessarily linear. So take some time to think about those and think about that puzzle, you know, all those individual pieces. And there are some sample title promotion packets available that you can look at from people who were successful. Those are on the internet, on the county operation forums. And the one thing I would say about that is they're extremely helpful to get started, but don't limit yourself just to exactly what that person's done. You know, that's just an example. It's not exactly what you have to do. So get some ideas from it, look at it as a starting point, but then also, you know, feel free to do things a little differently, as long as you're keeping within, including all those important parts that are in the template. Going through your supplemental documentation that we're required to put together for EPATs each year, that's a good place, especially, oh yeah, you know, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, oh, I did that evaluation, especially for things that maybe happened a few years ago. That's a good thing where you just get out the sticky notes, you know, start writing all those, and all these things I've done to work towards this major program. Reviewing the outcome and impact objectives that you report under, that can sometimes help you think about the right wording, or maybe if you're stuck with how to, you know, say exactly what some of your outcomes were, because you don't have to create those. You know, they should be exactly what we're already reporting about. You don't have to reword them. You can use the wording that's used there. And then, of course, your fellow agents who've recently gone through the process, your CED, your DED. And so though at first it just seems like you dumped a 10,000 piece puzzle out on the floor in front of you, where every piece is tiny, I have every confidence that you will be able to piece it together and present to us the complete and amazing picture of what your program is, and you'll be successful in title promotion. So I am now going to turn it back over to Keith as far as for screen sharing, but I would be happy to, of course, answer a few questions while he gets his final slides up. Oh, good. I can now see the chat again.
Yeah, it looks like all the questions have been answered that were put into the Q&A and chat. If anyone has any other questions, they can feel free to go ahead and put them in, and we can get to them now while Keith is getting ready to share the rest of the presentation. Once again, it looks like you're very thorough.
All right. Charlotte has done a great job capturing all the details for what's required in the title promotion package. I don't know, I had technical difficulties and had to move to my administrative associate's office next door and use her computer, but Janine captured that in the chat. But if you didn't see what was going on, that's why I'm now up here as Suzanne Hugus instead of Keith Walters. But we want to capture some things, and I'm not sure if it came up earlier. I know Charlotte talked about the supplemental documentation limit of 10 single-sided pages, but there's also a limit for the narrative, and that's 35 pages with 12-point font. But again, you can find that at the instructions listed online. We had a question earlier about sharing the PowerPoint, and I'm going to check and see if we can put this resource together and post it on the intranet with the directions so that you can glean the information that Charlotte presented earlier, because she did a great job on that. So as we look at some important dates which came up, again, you want to get your narrative part of the package to your county director and district director for their review, because they can give you some insight and offer suggestions for revising it and making it stronger. But you need to do that at least a month in advance. So by February 1st, be sure that they have time to look at it, and you can make revisions. And the submission date is March 1st by 11:59. So if it's not submitted, we will not be able to consider it in this year's. So March 1st, 2017 is the deadline for submission.
I'll confirm that they can hear you.
Janine, is everybody able to hear me fine?
I can hear you fine. Charlotte, do you hear Keith okay?
Yeah, I hear Keith fine.
Right. Since I changed computers, we thought we better make sure. So after the submission, we move into the review process, which Charlotte talked about. You'd be able to see once the district director has reviewed and added comments, as well as the county director, and that your letters of support have been attached through the one-stop shop. So who makes up that review committee? We talked about there is a committee, and that's why it takes a long period. So the group has to read through all the narratives and look for all these tidbits of what makes a sound, solid program. But we don't want to have them to have to search for that. So it really needs to be in the narrative. So you don't need to say in the narrative, see page 3 of the supporting documentation. That again is just to show examples of your work, but not as part of the narrative. So you don't want, that's what this slide's about. And things that you need to be sure, again, don't use acronyms, but we do need to be sure that you illustrate your work with the advisory leadership system, that you know that system and that you're using it, and you're illustrating how that group of people are helping you prioritize the programs that you're offering to address the needs. And when you use different terms like advisory leadership council, or program committees or specialized committee, spell it out so that they'll know if it's an ad hoc committee that made this recommendation, or if it was the overall county advisory leadership council. So you don't want to just have random communication and say, well, someone came by and had a good idea about a bird program, so we offered that. And that's not the advisory leadership system. So be sure that you spell out how you use that through your programming process. And then evaluations, they're not required for every activity that you talk about, but certainly you want to have some examples, whether you're using templates from Dr. J or you've created other types of evaluation instruments. It's good to have an overall qualitative kind of assessment of the program so that you can say, after, for example, after 5 years of providing pesticide education, we've reached, X number of people and saved this many dollars, so that you're not telling for each activity that you did, but you're making more broad general statements about the impacts from the evaluation instruments that you've used. You do want to document that change and measure the impacts. And I know some of our programs have specific activity evaluations that they use, but really need to look at it as a program evaluation so that you're taking all those pieces and parts, like Charlotte illustrated great with her puzzle pieces. You're putting all these pieces together to show your full story.
You know, Keith, I'll mention too that that can be a great thing, one of your evaluations to put as a supplemental document if you have enough. You haven't filled it up with other things.
Right. It's a great place to illustrate where you've used that, and not really to put a blank evaluation, but put the one to summarize so that they see from that activity, you know, how you gathered the data and what it illustrated. So it's a perfect place to illustrate that. And then on your success stories, Charlotte also mentioned you don't have to put all of your success stories. Certainly, if you're offering SNAP-Ed programs year after year, you wouldn't need to tell each time, but pick the best one with the best wording that's the most clear to communicate the point from that program. And again, think about, I know now we have a different format for success stories, but if you're looking over the last 5 years, you'll go back to when we used to think about PPPEIC with Problem Partners, Program People, Impact, and Conclusion, and be sure that it has a strong impact statement in that success story that you choose to share in your narrative. Because again, you only have 35 pages, so you don't want to have 15 pages of success stories and 10 pages telling how you come up with that. It would, you just want to utilize that space well. And then the scope, you need to tell in your narrative when you start off with how many years you're served in that role. Tell a little bit about the demographics. So have you reached 3,000 people out of a population of 30,000? Or have you reached 3,000 people out of a population of 300,000? So that they'll know the scope of the program and the impact that you're making on the citizens there in your county. So other information to include is your ERS. Again, take time to put that information together so that it's clear and it's not piecemeal, but you're showing through various activities how that data was collected and presented to show impact. And again, your supplemental documentation packet, those 10 pages, you could use you know, maybe something from your EPAT notebook or electronic file that you submit. I've seen people put marketing pieces, say like put 5 or 6 different newspapers, shrink them down so that you can show 6 little clips on one page instead of using 6 of your pages for 6 news articles. So those 10 pages of supplemental documentation are the creative part that you can illustrate your great work. So some tips on writing that story. There are some good examples listed online. I know some of us have strengths in science and math while others have writing skills. So you want to be sure that you format it so that it's easy to read. You don't want to use a lot of abbreviations, and it's best if you could have someone outside of your program area. So if you're a 4-H agent, have the ag agent to read it, or vice versa, so that they'll say, well, what did you mean here when you said SNAP-Ed? What is that? So you can spell out things and make it clear for the reader to understand what you're trying to present in your narrative. Again, use proper grammar, correct spelling, sentence structure. There's all these things, these pieces that help make the narrative more easy to understand. clearly and succinctly so you don't ramble. So if you'll follow the template and use 1A and 2AB so that when those that are reviewing it will know where to look for your outcomes and impacts. They'll know where to find each program. And start off with your best program. Don't work up to it because you don't want to lose the reader. You want them to be wowed with the great impacts that you're having with the programs offered there in your county. And all of you are here today, but it's good to participate in this kind of training. I know last year we offered it at conference and had, I don't know, a room full. There must have been 60 or 80 folks in there. So it's good to plan in advance. And I know some of you aren't eligible this year, but you're looking at what you need to gather and prepare for as you think about title promotion. I talked about asking the coworker to review it. Also, have someone to make recommendations. Say, what part were you not clear about? Do you know? And if it's someone that knows your program area, like a coworker in an adjoining county or something, if they read it, they'll be like, well, you left out talking about your field test or your yield contest or some portion that would be significant in improving your narrative. We've already mentioned several times about the samples. That's a good place to see some of the title promotions that's been presented in the past that were successful. So in summary, it's an important, exciting step in your career. Certainly, when you look back 5 years from now, you'll have this document that'll say, wow, I remember doing that. And you can reflect back on the great impacts that you've had. Another great reason to, or use that you can have is after you've captured this in a narrative, you can use portions of that to apply for awards and other, whether it's professional association or extension awards. Some parts of the narrative could be used for those purposes as well. But start early. Don't wait till the end of January or middle of February to think that you can pull it all together. It does take a while, but if you'll break it down one program at a time, and Charlotte did a great job, whether you start with the impacts and work backwards, just be sure that all the parts are easy to find and that you can have time for folks to review it and give impact. That's our input on how you might improve it. And that's another thing. She mentioned the letters of support. Don't wait until middle of February to ask the county manager to give you a letter of support. Go ahead and start thinking about that. Talk with your county director. Let them know that you're working on your title promotion, that you're going to need these letters from the county director and the county manager so that they'll be prepared to have time to get in there and upload the documents for you. So now we'll entertain any questions that you might have about anything we've been through this process or things. I know we've answered some questions in the chat window. I'm going to stop sharing now.
If anyone has any questions, they can put it in the Q&A, or if they can't find that in the chat, or if they raise their hand, I can give them a microphone.
All right. Well, Charlotte must have done such a great job. We just don't have questions.
They're all numb.
Well, I warned them in the beginning it was death by PowerPoint. So
Right.
it's a lot of information to take on.
I made a note of, I forgot to mention, and you kind of just said it now, is that because the packet will be read, it won't just be read by ag agents if you're an ag agent. So you're going to have a bunch of different people reading it. So you don't, want to use a lot of jargon or acronyms, and you don't need to use real highly academic language. You want this to be written in a real easy to understand form, and kind of like you're telling us your story. And I remember one agent has always stuck with me, described doing title promotion is writing a thesis on your career. And it is a little bit like that. But I will say, with all seriousness, it's very satisfying when you get that title promotion package put together and you look back, because we often don't take the time or even have the time to reflect on a number of years of what we've accomplished. And I've done it twice, and I found it, just something that really inspired me to do more, and I felt very satisfied. And I will definitely, the first time was harder than the second time. You learn a lot of things the first time you put your first title promotion packet together that help you realize what type of records and things you need to start to keep, so that the second time you do it, it's a lot easier.
We had a question about confirming the years of service. So again, if you're, and I know Taylor Chavis, she's a livestock agent down in Robinson. So I'm assuming you're asking about moving from assistant agent to associate agent. So she wanted to know about years of service. And again, it is a minimum of 3 years of service as an assistant agent, and that's as of July 1st in the year that you're applying. And had another question from Holly Jordan. If we're going to full agent, do we include info from the time that we're promoted to assistant to now, or when we started as an agent? And Charlotte actually covered this earlier, but you said promoted to associate. So you don't really have to capture everything in your last title promotion, but certainly you could highlight some key points to let the reader know, when you were hired, when you were promoted from assistant to associate. And then as you're moving to full agent, we're really looking for more scholarly work of an associate moving to full agent than we would for an assistant to associate level. So be sure that you capture great impact for that. Other questions? Well, I know I would be willing to take questions if you need to email me or think of something after this. And Charlotte has done a great job presenting. And again, we're going to try to make this PowerPoint part of the resources that you can find on the intranet, so you can refer back to this information. And I think Janine shared the link in the chat earlier for the county operations forms, which has directions as well as the policy, directions to navigate through the one-stop shop. But there's like 5 links there, one of which is a checklist. And I would encourage you, before you hit the submit button, to go through that checklist and make sure you've covered all the parts that it's asking for. But if there are no other questions, we'll see you later on Zoom.